Welcome back to Drilling Deeper. Today we're going to talk about mine permitting, water management, screening, and more. But first, let me welcome in Jack Kopanski, Pit and Quarry Managing Editor. Jack, welcome back to Drilling Deeper, episode 16.
Kevin, thanks as always for the warm welcome. Thrilled to be here. Excited to dive in.
Hey, before we dive into the content, the plethora that we have on tap for everybody today, let's give a shout out to our new episode sponsor.
Yes, thank you to Syntron for sponsoring this episode. With more than 140 years of bulk material handling experience, Syntron Material Handling is a recognized industry leader that provides innovative engineering solutions, high-performance products, and superior customer service. Syntron offers solutions in conveying, feeding, screening, elevating, vibratory flow aids, and mining controls of bulk products. For more information, visit syntronmh.com. Thank you to Syntron.
Yes, thanks to our new episode sponsor. Glad to have you in the fold. And as I mentioned at the top, Jack, we're going to talk about a few different topics, some related, some a little bit more jarring of a transition, I guess, when I think about screening, because we're going to get into aggregate processing a little bit at the end of episode 16 here today. We're still going through our slew of interviews from the Ag 1 show. It was a really valuable time, a great 3 days that we had in Nashville at the end of March, end of the first quarter. And you know, at the magazine, a lot of times we look for content that's evergreen. You know, there's timely things that happen in our industry, but the beauty that we were able to kind of achieve at Ag 1 was, you know, we sat down with folks like Ben Black and Randy Kunz of Geologic and Ken Albaugh of Xylem, and who we're going to hear from today, along with Ian Edwards of Major. You know, we're talking about topics that are evergreen, that are somewhat timeless and applicable and useful to your business, whether it's June of 2024 or, you know, 5 or 10 years from now. You know, things do change, Jack, you know, because we talk about equipment and technology on the show a lot. But again, we're talking about some evergreen topics here today in water management, screening, and mine permitting.
Yeah, you talk about that evergreen idea where, like you said, the technology could be different 5, 10, 20 years from now. It could be using different things, or different pieces of equipment could be operating different ways. I know we've touched a lot on, you know, what electrification might look like as we go into future years, but some things aren't going to change, and one of those things is going to be hit on by our first interview here, Ben Black and Randy Kunz with Geologic. As a geological and mining engineering company, they work on the front end of new products such as greenfield sites, brownfield sites, and get involved in the use of environmental aspects like rezoning. You're going to hear a little bit about that from Ben and Randy. Ben kind of gets into a little bit of interesting stuff as far as his involvement, you know, as a company, and how it's led him to court a couple times. So I'll let him fully explain that and give you all the details there. But without further ado, Ben Black, Randy Kunz, Geologic, take it away. Maybe for those that aren't aware, what is it that you guys do at Geologic?
So we are a geological and mining engineering and planning company. Primarily, we work on the front end, so new projects, greenfield sites. Some of our projects are actually brownfield, so historical mining's been going on, and they're looking at a mining expansion. We also get involved in some of the environmental aspects of it, some of the permitting things, rezoning. So if it's one of our clients has had us assist them with some rezoning activities. So pretty much all that kind of front end stuff is what we do. We also have in-house laboratory services, so we can do all kinds of rock testing for aggregates and like rock mechanics type things. So pretty much, you know, our 18-person firm can cover the whole gamut of those things. And then I'll let Randy talk about kind of his focus areas with the company, because, you know, what he does with Geologic, what his group does with Geologic actually really supports the work that we do, and then is ultimately what our end users use.
Yeah, and I manage our engineering group, and so we do things like pit optimization, overall, you know, quarry and mine planning. We also help prepare the figures and maps for any of the permits and our permit applications. And then we also have a couple drones, both LiDAR, and we do both LiDAR and photogrammetry. We also have a thermal camera, which we've been experimenting with kind of preliminary wetlands delineations and stuff to try to assist on the front end. But I manage our drone program as well, and so we're always looking to try to innovate and bring new things in. Can be a challenge with a small company. We don't have, you know, unlimited budgets, but we try to, keep our, eyes on what's happening in the industry and try to introduce new things that maybe can improve efficiency for our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of a funny story, talking about and with Geologic here. I know the first time I encountered your guys' company was at the South Carolina Aggregates Association annual convention in December of 2022, second time they held the event. And, I stopped by your booth, just saw what was going on, did a trivia question to win a prize, and I got the Roadside Geology Book of Georgia, and I know that's sort of a staple giveaway at your guys' booth. How many of those books do you think are out there now thanks to you guys?
Probably close to 100. Every time we buy them, I buy them in 50-book blocks.
Okay.
And we give them away, so SCAA, GCAA. Sometimes we'll just give them to a client if they come in the office and they're like, oh, this is a really cool book. We're like, you want one? And they're like, yeah, sure, we'll take it. But yeah, no, that's a great book. It's things like that, it just helps people remember us, I think. I mean, obviously, you brought it up. We also have our funny shirts. I'm sure you guys have seen our logo shirts. We've now also brought that into now hard hat stickers.
That's great.
Which I'll give you some. So we have hard hat stickers you can put on your hard hat. But yeah, we really feel like, that kind of stuff, even if it's kind of like, goofy or whatever, it helps people remember us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Randy, and you were kind of talking before about some of the technology and some of the innovations that are going on with in the industry, and I know we're seeing a ton of them really since Con Expo. We've been hearing a lot about digitalization, automation, electrification. I'm curious and you mentioned the way you guys are using drones, radar, lidar. What are maybe some technological or equipment trends that you guys are keeping your eye on and either have incorporated or maybe looking to incorporate?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things that we're seeing it in is obviously a lot of clients have already adopted their own drone programs where they are now flying their quarries on a quarterly or even monthly basis. And it's helping them to better assess how efficient their quarry is operating because they can actually measure, efficiencies in real time and monitor their pits, whether it be slope failure issues or anything like that in real time as well. So drones is definitely taken off, in the quarrying industry. The other place that I really see us starting to do some things and some other people showing some interest in is really creating 3D models, potentially of quarries, whether that be just for internal representation of a quarry or it could be for that visual representation to either get a rezoning application through or a permit. That presentation to the public, the public perception is a big deal, and so we are seeing a lot more of that need to kind of create those beautiful visualizations. A lot of people just see this, these images of a pit and all the rock, and just think, blasting and don't realize that there's going to be a lot of effort put into screening that from the public and planting trees and building berms, and that realistically a lot of that it won't be even visible to the public, to the naked eye.
Right, and you talk about that industry perception, and that's something that we follow and write and hear so much about. And you mentioned the berming and thinking about the blast, the vibration, the noise, all sort of the negatives that people associate when it comes with aggregates. They don't really understand that the building we're in, the table we're at, everything would life would not be possible without the product that this industry produces. So just what are your thoughts on how this industry is kind of working to change its perception? What do you think is maybe working, and where do you think more work might need to be done?
Yeah, so I can talk to that a lot because I'm the one that typically goes to those rezoning meetings and planning and zoning meetings and the community outreach things. We with some of the materials that Randy and some of the other team members have prepared, or even our clients that have prepared, and the perception, the negative perception is real. People, I like to say, people don't know what they don't know. So if they hear, oh, we're getting a quarry, or a quarry wants to come in our in our backyard, not in my backyard. So these folks show up and they're already apprehensive to begin with, and one of the things that I strongly advocate when a client comes to us, whether it's a big large producer or a new producer that's getting ready to start an operation, is community outreach up front is the way to go. We've worked with some people that were looking at doing a quarry. They didn't do much community outreach, and it blew up in their face. And then we've worked with other folks, and I'm not sure if I can say it, but I will. Vulcan, they were very big about community outreach. They had public information meetings. They came up with renderings and drawings of what it was going to look like, and what the operations were going to be, and that really helped allay a lot of the fears that the community members had. Now, I'm not saying they just approved it wholeheartedly, but there are economic benefits. There are a lot of benefits to bringing these type of operations into one's community, and I think if the people that are going to start a quarry, the companies that are going to start a quarry, can start really focusing on that type of aspect, those aspects of it, and what are they going to do to help with environmental issues and all those type of things, and they lead with that. That's not like something that comes up from the rear. I think that goes a long way to help kind of get people on their side. So it's never an easy street, for sure. There's always going to be pushback, and of course outside organizations come in all the time that help fearmonger and just make things more difficult for everybody, but those are the things. And then the second part of your question was, where do I see things going? I see things going in the direction of there will need to be necessarily more quarries. There will. The infrastructure is just going to demand it, and the more community outreach, the more things people do, companies do to get ahead of the curve on a lot of these things, is just going to go a long way. So I really feel like over the next 5 to 10 years, there's going to be probably an explosion, no pun intended, of new quarries all around the country. So.
And one thing I'd like to add is I think one thing that is actively being done and is probably going to need to increase is just reaching out at a very early stage before, honestly, middle schools, high schools, even potentially elementary schools, talking more about, like you said, where the products are coming from, how they're produced, maybe even taking, I've seen this from some of the large producers are starting to do this, introduce programs where they're actually working with some of the local schools, having field trips, come out to a quarry on a day and show them, hey, get kids excited about this stuff and explain to them how necessary it is for everyday life. I think that's really important, is to start early, and then when they get older they'll understand, hopefully be more amenable to saying, hey, no, we need this is good for our community and for our country as a whole.
Yeah, and I think just going off of that, I know at least from my personal experience, I came into this industry in late 2021. It's been about 2.5 years since I've been in here, and I remember when I started, they told me I'd be writing for a magazine called Pit and Quarry, and I hear quarry, I didn't envision this. The only quarry I had ever known up until that point were marble quarries, and it's like that's just because that's the only one that seems to get attention, whether it's in media or in whatever realm. And knowing what I know now, I wish that younger me would have been educated about this kind of stuff, because I didn't necessarily have a negative perception about it. I had no perception about it. I didn't know they were there. And we had someone in here earlier that, again, targets, maybe targets is a bit of a strong word, but they focus on fourth grade students that again, very young, and they take them out to the quarry, they let them dig around, look for fossils and stuff, and let them look for fun stuff. And I'm like, that feels so imperative, because again, coming from someone that had no knowledge of it, I wish I had known then what I know now, to have a bit of a better understanding of how important this industry really is.
Right. And just to tag onto that as well, these things are job creators. So not everybody's going to go to college. They're going to need folks that are equipment operators and laborers, mechanics, whatever. They're good paying jobs. So there's a job creation and even the tax base aspect as well. And I think all those things need to really be pushed more.
All right, yeah, thank you again to Ben Black and Randy Kunz for taking a little time with us for spending a little time with us at Ag One at our booth back in March. We really appreciate it. A couple of good guys. Obviously, you know Geologic well from as being our episode sponsors for a while here. So we appreciate working with them. Glad they were able to help us out. And like you said, Kevin, just kind of an interesting point of view that we don't often get, I think, in our industry. Sort of, we see a lot of when a site is sort of starting and maybe even when it's ending, going into kind of that reclamation phase after a quarry maybe has exhausted all its resources. But kind of interesting seeing what goes on before rock is blasted and rock is crushed.
A lot of work, and I think a lot of our focus on the magazine, Jack, is in the active quarry operation, the processing, the moving of material within a site. But I mean, you're talking especially nowadays in 2024, years, maybe decades long for some sites to come online. And one thing that Ben said in the interview just a few minutes ago, toward the back end of the interview, was how over the next 5 or 10 years there's going to be an explosion of new quarries around the country. I always kind of wonder, Jack. We hear about the difficulty, and Ben talked about this along with Randy, the difficulty that producers have bringing a new site online, and that challenge is not getting any easier for industry leaders. If anything, it's getting harder. But I think what's going to happen, when we absolutely are having such difficulties in these metro areas, because you think about where the aggregates need to be used, and for the most part, by and large, it's where the people are, and those are the people centers, the metro areas, cities. But really, what's going to happen, from what I gathered talking to people, is and Ben kind of reiterates this in his quote that I just shared, but quarries are going to be there, and we're going to see more, but they're just going to be away from the population centers, and it's going to cost more to bring that material in. I think Tom Hill even talked about that on one of our recent episodes about, quarries are going to be there, but they're just going to be farther away from where the demand is. Maybe we'll see more imports come in if, parts of the U.S., on the coastal areas, California maybe get a little bit more difficult, but the quarries aren't going anywhere, because if we want to maintain our way of life, we've got to have the materials out of those sites.
Yeah, they're certainly going to have to find a way to keep those going. I know one big reason why, you might hear people say they don't necessarily want to pursue a greenfield site. Obviously, permitting is a big deal, but at the same time, you got to think there are already so many quarries out there. Everyone's going to be going for sort of that sweet spot of land, that sweet spot where they know rock's going to be. So, I mean, it's kind of, you're not maybe necessarily getting to the dregs, quote unquote, but, it's going to be, you might be finding your second choice of land, third choice of land. And again, we got to keep this way of life going. We got to keep the rock flowing. So that was a great rhyme right there. Credit to me.
Patented,
trademarked, registered. So it is going to be interesting to see what happens over these next 5 to 10 years, like he said, because we're going to have to figure out some way to keep it going. So,
and as we were planning this episode, we were kind of looking at our inventory of interviews and what we wanted to put out there for episode 16. And, we had a great sit down, Jack, with the Geologic guys. And I had the opportunity to sit down with Ken Albaugh. And Jack, I think you mentioned earlier in the show, a lot of times we're focusing on, equipment and technology, the stuff that's actively helping your operation, crush rock, move rock, that sort of thing. But water is essential to just about every operation out there. We need to have clean rock, and, washing operations are becoming more central to getting the right spec rock out the door and into jobs, into construction sites, those sorts of things. So, while we talked about maybe an off-the-cuff topic or two with the Geologic guys, we brought Ken on, and, again, we're not talking about necessarily core aggregate processing ideas with Ken in our interview to come here, but we talked about water management, and Xylem, prides itself on being a water solutions company that uses smart tech. That's who employs Ken, and I've had the fortunate opportunity to sit down a time or two with Ken over the years, and I had the opportunity once again at Ag One, where he talked about water management and how it's crucial to the success of today's operations. And you're going to hear a little bit about their approach to smart technology, how AI can play a role in the kind of the place it's going to take with water and aggregate operations nationwide. And at the end of our interview, you'll hear about what Ken is hearing as concern number one for today's aggregate producers.
Well, you did an Ag One Academy session here on smart water management. We've talked about that previous to sitting down here today, Ken, and it seems like that's trending. Any sort of technology that you can equip onto existing equipment or new equipment, it seems like that's where the industry is going. I guess that whole trend, smart technology, smart tech. Where are we with that, and how much more is there to come?
It's an ever-evolving thing, right? I mean, it's almost like when you launch a new technology or a new product, there's another one right behind it in the wings, right? AI is starting to take effect, and especially in our industry, with the speed that you can do analytics, the speed that you can provide actionable data back to a customer, and really trying to take all of the bombarding of a customer. You know, they're getting data from their haul trucks, they're getting data from their pumps, and really focus that in on the things that they can go change and moderate and improve their operation. So it's definitely an ongoing challenge with everybody, and really just trying to, a lot of our solutions that we have are really pretty much technology or brand agnostic, so you can use them on whatever products, like our optimized product can be used on a conveyor if you needed it, just as well as it can be used on a pump. So we're seeing a lot of that. People are really wanting more universal solutions that they can use across the board and standardize on. So,
from what I understand, what I've gathered from some producers is they tell us that they see AI has great potential on maybe the back office end of things, like accounting and financials. But then when it comes to the equipment or the operations, actually out in the field, out in the elements, maybe there's opportunity, but they're not as confident. I guess, do you have any feel for where the opportunities might be on the operations front, or are there limitations out there right now?
Yeah, there's definitely limitations. There's just validating the data that you're getting and the feedback that you're getting, right? But it is on the speed of the analytics and making sure that those are comprehensive and really narrowing the path down as much as you can for a customer. They're spot on, right? Like we use it in our business on the back end and handling everything from invoices coming in, all that kind of stuff. But to get it out into the field and actually get the intelligence and the data collection and stuff to make the AI smarter, that's some of the challenge too, right? Because every quarry is completely different, and no matter if it's the same producer, this pit from that pit is completely different. So getting the AI smart enough to where it can pick up those nuances, that's the challenge at this point.
Where would you say Xylem is, or the industry at large is at this point with the adoption of smart technology? Or I know we've talked about sensors and things on Xylem pumps in the past. Seems like any equipment that could be equipped with something to give you actionable information, that's kind of where things are going. And we continue to see hardware come out, whether it's in your space or crushing, screening elsewhere. But I feel like the industry change is really going to take place on the technology front. It's knowing how the equipment's performing and reacting to it versus having better equipment.
Yeah, it is. It's that point of action, right? And getting there quicker, that people are looking for. And I think as you dive into particular OEMs, I mean, nobody knows Xylem equipment better than we do. Nobody knows Caterpillar equipment better than Caterpillar does, right? So having that intel from the OEM perspective gives us a unique opportunity, just like a Caterpillar, a John Deere, Komatsu, whoever. We know our equipment, and we can make that action point show up much quicker than, say, somebody that's just looking at general vibration trends or temperature trends and trying to decipher that and pull that out.
Let's talk about water management at this point. I feel like that's a topic that is maybe buried and doesn't get the attention that it needs to, but it's very important, obviously. I mean, water's a tremendous commodity. It's something that every market, everybody needs. Yep. And there's some markets, you read certain reports that, in the years to come, that may be a problem. There may be shortages. Producers are looking to better manage their water as well, and there's pressure from regulators to do a better job or do things a little bit differently. How is water management changing at this stage of the game, Ken?
Yeah, water management is, absolutely crucial to the success of any producer's operation, whether it's, again, too much or too little, right? And we work with that full spectrum from the folks east of the Mississippi. It's, we've got plenty of water, and it's usually a challenge for dealing with that and being able to discharge and make sure you're meeting all the quality standards and stuff like that. And then the West Coast, they don't have enough. So it's even more precious out there because they need it to wash rock. Yeah, I think the technologies and things like that, as they improve, we're getting into more and more reuse, more and more treatment with our Evoqua brand. That's a complete different game changer for us to be able to treat and clean water and help recycle it much faster so that ponds get smaller, they're less risk, things like that. So it's definitely an ongoing thing. The environmental regulations are not getting any easier. And I think one of the things that the mining industry overall gets a bad rap, they say we destroy the environment, we do all this stuff. most of the best conservationists that I know are mining people, right? They're hunters, they're fishers, they make their living off the land, and they take care of it, right? So, most people now, the ESG and all the different things there, we're talking to people about energy efficiency, diesel fuel consumption, right? All those things are being talked about every day with all of our customers.
Yeah, it's a storyline that we've been trending on the magazine, talking about quite a bit with, how the industry manages its business, and the public at large doesn't necessarily understand what we do. We probably haven't done as great of a job telling the story of aggregates or mining over the years, but it seems that there's a great opportunity because of what you're talking about with the things that we're doing with water, because of the things that we're doing with energy, to get that story out there. Do you feel like some of the solutions on the equipment side or the technology side, is that an opportunity to kind of convey to the people out there that this is an industry that cares?
Right. Yeah, I think the technology and the advancements in technology are definitely helping with that, and they're able to tell a better story. They're able to have the data and the analytics to back up their story, right, which I think is very important. There's a lot of producers that, just their discharge permits alone, and the water that they're putting back into the environment is cleaner than the water that's coming out of some of the environments they're in. So, it's definitely a story that we need to tell, and we need to, I get all the time in airports and stuff, people are, what mines, rock quarries? Where, I live in Nashville. Well, there's probably 20 rock quarries, and within 50 miles of Nashville, and people don't realize it, don't understand it, don't see it, and they think that the gravel in the roads just appears, right? So it's definitely a good story. I think where the industry is going in the right direction. The leaders in the in the industry are definitely pushing in the right direction.
It seems like maybe some things along these lines that we're talking about, they originate in Europe or over the pond. Recycling, for example, that's been prevalent in many countries in Europe for a long time now, and we're seeing wet processing systems become more prevalent across the U.S., across Canada, over the last several years. Are we going to see a lot more of that, do you think? Is there going to be a great jump in recycling? I've even heard at the show here this week that, aggregate producers, maybe even some of the major producers are looking to get into recycling as an extension of the business. Some are already kind of in that space, but it sounds like this could be an opportunity for them to supplement their aggregates businesses.
Right. Yeah, and I think, it's land's one of those things that's not being created, right? It's, aggregate pits are not being created, anymore. The amount of they're here are here. So, yeah, recycling, I think, is a very important component of that. I think the technology has definitely improved in some of the recycling techniques and methods that they're using. I think that'll be a trend that definitely continues and grows.
Ken, on the show floor this week, we see good traffic, hear a lot of good sentiments from producers and manufacturers about how the show is going. To me, that's an extension of how the industry's feeling at large right now. What sorts of things are you hearing from customers when they come in the booth in terms of, one, like their ability or their want to buy equipment and to work with you? And how would you say, secondarily, their business is performing overall?
I think the industry as a whole is doing very well. There's definitely a lot of stuff with the infrastructure bills and things like that they're causing producers to need to produce more, for jobs and projects. But I also think that people are always looking for, people who are trying to advance technology, trying to make their operations better. Like I always tell people that the water side of the business that we work in is not, to them they crush rock. Like I had an executive yesterday that said, we crush rock. We don't think about water. We don't, that's not what we do, and that's why we partner with you, is you guys know how to handle and move our water. So I think that's, as you look at all the different technologies being displayed here this week, that's what people do. I think they, the good old days of being a generalist, I think with the technology and the way technology is advancing and as fast as it's advancing, it's very hard to be a generalist anymore, right? You're going to have to almost pick a lane and be in that, and that's where we come in with our services and our water equipment and technologies.
What concerns do you have for the state of the industry at this point in time, Ken? I mean, what's plaguing or challenging your customers, maybe specifically on the business front, and broadly, like what's a big concern at the moment that you're hearing about?
Overall, it's costs, right? I mean, everybody, nothing's getting any cheaper, right? Diesel fuel's not getting any cheaper. Electricity's not getting any cheaper. Rubber's not getting any cheaper, right? So if you think of the major things they consume, costs are going up every day. So it's how do you manage those increasing costs and still be competitive in the marketplace, right? Because there's more and more competitors, and and some of the consolidation of the industry too, and the producer side has really driven that competitiveness too to almost some levels where they have to come up with ways to do things better and faster and more efficient. I think the regulation, I think if we don't hit an inflection point at some point where the regulations are controlled and understood and make sense and are common sense based, then that could be a longer term problem for the industry.
Yeah, the consolidation of this industry has been fascinating and ongoing for many years, and it doesn't seem like it's stopping at any point. It's an industry that's got big producers, and the big producers are getting bigger. Do you see a difference in terms of the ability or how the approach, perhaps, of a major producer goes about water management or operations versus maybe a smaller or mid-sized?
Sure. Yeah, your smaller and mid-sized producers, I mean, they're even more focused on cost, right, and how to be more efficient. The quality standards, right, with some of the new DOT regulations around the rock quality and the asphalt standards and things. So they have to be perfect, right? And whereas some of the major producers, they can pick and choose areas that they want to go improve and work on first. But yeah, a mid-size or smaller producer, they got to hit them all right. And I'd say that's probably their biggest challenge is not missing a step somewhere. And with water management, it's very easy to oversize things or undersize things, and it's going to cause you maintenance and reliability issues.
Well, that was Ken Albaugh of Xylem. Ken, thank you for joining us. It was great to visit with you earlier this year. And Jack, as I was kind of combing through the interview once more with Ken, I kind of found myself zeroing in on this quote that he shared. It was this: it's most of the best conservationists that I know are mining people. They make their living off the land and they take care of it. In the same vein or a similar vein that we heard, Randy and Ben talking about earlier, the Geologic guys. We see all this criticism of mining companies, of the mining industry, and at the end of the day, it's many of the leaders within our industry who are doing the work proactively. In some cases, I think Ken was saying that a lot of times we're putting the water out cleaner than we're taking it in because we're processing it and doing things that are stewards of the land, stewards of the water. So again, really appreciated Ken getting together and visiting with us at the show earlier this year.
Yeah, Ken, obviously, like you mentioned, or I should say you mentioned how we've kind of worked together with Ken in the past, and you've had a few good conversations with him. I was able to talk and work with him a little bit on a panel discussion I had with him back in South Carolina in late 2022, and he was a lot of great insight in there, talking about sort of how Xylem is managing, data and how things are going on and what they're working on when it comes to this water treatment and water processing. And also shout out to Xylem's Sarah Smith. I know she was at our roundtable this year. She was she's another wealth of information. They make a great team there at Xylem, so we certainly appreciate working with them. And that quote you shared, I think, is just really eye-opening. You talk about the way mining or people in mining really take care of the land, and I feel like that's such a sort of maybe under talked about subject, where it's like I feel like these people know that they're working with a finite resource in a sense, and they got to make the most out of it that they can. If they're doing something wrong or if they're not doing something the right way, that's going to do is hinder them in the long run. And I think that's part of the reason why people get so frustrated with so much of this permitting and regulation stuff, where it's like, we're not out to be the boogeyman. We're not out to be the bad guy. We're not out to do things the wrong way. We want to do things the right way because it helps us. It helps our customers. It helps the world around us and infrastructure and everything we're doing. So I think that's just such a striking quote there that I think really, really embodies what's going on. And, I'll admit I'm less familiar with water than water and
that makes two of us.
Yeah,
Jack.
I'm less familiar with water and quarry and aggregate operations than I probably should be. But a lot of great insight there from Ken. And just from that conservation standpoint, I think it really does go to show how important and how seriously people in aggregates take that.
Well, we've put 2 interviews out there, Geologic and Xylem, so far on episode 16, and we've got one more to come here. A little bit of a starker transition. Wanted to talk about screening, and at the show earlier this year, we brought Ian Edwards of Major into the booth, and we talked about how important the screen is to operations. And over the years, if you've been in the industry long enough, you hear about how the screen is the cash box, and sometimes it's not really valued. Or I think we think about ourselves as the crushing industry, or if you're describing or characterizing the work you do, we crush rock. But the screen is the cash box at the end of the day. And, Ian talked about the role that the screen plays, how equipment today is being designed much more safely. And he talked about the nature of the worker today, too, and how the industry is changing and how that's maybe putting a little bit more pressure on manufacturers and dealers to make sure that people are trained, because the producers don't necessarily have the people that they once did. So that's shifting within the industry. So with that, let's hear a little bit from Ian Edwards of Major.
Well, Ian, I've seen you speak a couple of times already, over the last few years. I think you're at the Ontario Stone Sand and Gravel Association's Safety and Health Seminar in January or February.
Did
a great presentation there, and you did another one here at Ag One, as they've got Ag One Academy track. It was a panel, I believe, as you shared with me the other day, and it was about minimizing downtime and maintenance related to screening. Tell us about some of the messages that you shared and that were heard by producers who attended in that room.
Yeah, we're really trying to make sure that, you don't want your operation down. This is, the big one. If it's down, it's not making money and it's costing you money. So from a screening standpoint, we want to make sure we're doing our part to make sure that everyone is well versed in, how to keep it installed properly, what to look for in terms of, danger signs. You really don't want the operation going down. And, we often say, screen media is like the last part of the puzzle, right? You have the big haul trucks, you have your cone crushers, you have your screen boxes, all of those big ticket items. But if you don't have the proper screen and it's not running and you're shut down because of that, it's really hard to get your end product on the ground. So really just trying to make sure people are aware of what to look for. And in our industry, as lately there's been a lot of turnover. We have a lot of new hires and a lot of new younger people coming in, and we want to make sure that those people are trained and educated the right way, not only to ensure that screen is put in there properly, but to make sure that they're being safe. We work in a very dangerous environment. A pit is dangerous. There's a lot of things going on, and if the new people coming in aren't aware of what risks are there, and one part that's often left out is what to do if something happens. We often tell them, be aware of this, you could get hurt, but what if you get hurt? What's the next step? So you've really seen, I think, as a whole, Ag One, OSSGA, as you mentioned, the organizations taking that footprint of, let's make sure our people are safe. We need to make sure we're safe and they know what to do if they get into trouble. So we've been spending a lot of time doing that.
Being in screen media and then working around screening, connected with screening manufacturers or vibrating screen companies, those sorts of entities, do you sense that there's a lot of emphasis and energy around designing equipment, engineering equipment that's inherently more safe? Because perhaps what you're talking about with the the turnover that we've seen in recent years, and just trying to keep things simple, trying to keep things as safe as possible for the people operating around the equipment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're seeing, as an entire industry, I think you're seeing that, right? We're seeing people try to evolve and continue to do something new, and I think they're incorporating into that the safety aspect, the quality aspect, the continuity aspect. So I think you're starting to see different things within the industry to try and make it easier. And again, we're losing that older guard, if you will, that's really built this industry. We still require a lot from them. I say this, I think you've heard me at the end of every one of the presentations that I give. The younger group, we're relying on the older guard to train us and educate us. We can read books, we can read magazines, we can do online training, but that in the field, touch and feel, boots on the ground experience, we can't learn that anywhere else. We need those people to train us and make sure we know what we're doing.
In your experience, Ian, if you noticed this trend or shift potentially from producers learning from other producers or their peers before them, the men or women who put in 30 or 40 plus years to a site, to the education instead coming from dealers or manufacturers like a Major, is there more responsibility on manufacturers like Major and others to play a role in the education of producer employees?
Yeah, I think so. But I think you see that in the sense that, again, we're seeing a lot of new people come into the industry, and they're not from the industry. They are really new to the industry. It's not new hires. They're coming from other industries. And that's putting pressure, I think, in a good way, on all of us as manufacturers or OEMs to beef up our training, right? We need to do a better job of making sure that we can train those new people coming into the industry not only quickly, but with as much education as we can, so that they can go out into the field and have value and add value to the end user.
How much of the education out there needs to be tied to the maintenance aspect, and how good quality maintenance, being on top of your equipment, inspecting it, doing walk-arounds, how that helps with the lack of downtime or extending the use of the equipment? I mean, is that where a lot of your conversations?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big part of the efficiency process. And again, that comes to ensuring that you have a schedule of some sort. Again, you never want to wait until you have a problem to know you have a problem. So, put a schedule in place, make sure that there's a plan. And with all of the new, technology that's out there, AI and things of that nature, there's tools. There's tools that weren't available before that can help you detect things real time, and you can see that an issue might be coming. So as much as, again, we're very old school industry, which I love, it's one of the things I love the most about it, there is new technology. And if we can take those two things and mesh them together, I think there's a great opportunity for us to make great strides in avoiding downtime and losing those efficiencies out in the market.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was ConExpo 2020, the COVID ConExpo. I feel like Major had a press conference, and we were hearing about smart tech related to screening and FlexMat screens. Where is that at this stage? I mean, because I feel like it's not just screening where we're seeing more bugs and sensors being incorporated to equipment, but certainly it's impacting screening, or has the potential to impact screening if somebody wants to explore or invest in that arena. How far have we come, since that 2020 period, and how much more runway is there to kind of get more technology into operations?
Yeah, so we're definitely making headway. We're trying to add more value to the end user, right? It's all about making the end user's life easier. How do you make their job easier so they can focus on other things? So you're right, we have a vibration sensor that we use, that we go on site, that's part of our SMS process and plant audits to really help kind of dial in things with regards to the screen media to make sure that we're being efficient. And then with regards to the screen itself, what you're referring to is the RFID chip, which we have on our screens, and that's really helping, it's part of the training process, right? When you hire somebody new, do they know how to, go out and measure a screen? Do they know how to check the appropriate opening, the wire diameter? We're putting an RFID chip in the screen so you can go out and just tag it with the Major app, and it'll tell you everything you need to know about that screen. We, of course, have many ideas of where we want to go with that. I'm not going to share that with you now. We got some secrets we like to keep, but there is definitely a breadth of new opportunities to use that style of technology within the screen media as we continue to go forward.
Where would you say customers or producers or the industry at large is with the adoption of smart technology, with screening or other categories that are central to operations? I mean, it seems like there's a lot of interest. It seems like, from what I hear too, maybe a lot of the bigger size, the mega producers are kind of investing there first because they have the wherewithal and the resources to do that. I guess who are the first ones to kind of jump in and get a part of that space?
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly right. I don't think I could say it better. It's who has the opportunity to do it. I think everyone's open-minded. If you're going to make someone's life easier or safer, people are interested in what you have to offer. But it really has to do with what stage are you at in your life? Like, do you have the funds to do that? Can you invest in it? Some people may like the idea, but it's not cheap sometimes to get into this. So I think you're going to see the industry move towards it more and more. Again, like you kind of said, there's the old school and there's the new school. And I don't think it's a situation where you're removing one or the other. I think it's a situation where we want to mesh them together, and that's going to foster the best culture moving forward.
What else are you trying to help producers with at this stage? We talk about technology and how that's kind of moving things along and has the potential to do a lot more. The idea of being on top of your maintenance, that was part of your presentation.
Yep.
Are there other key components that are focuses of conversations that you regularly have with producers?
Supply chain is obviously a big one, right? A lot of what we Major Wire do is 100% specific to what you need. So it's not a quick fix, right? So just working with them to understand, what your end users are doing, what they're buying, when they're buying it. Again, we're using technology to help us kind of detect when those needs are going to happen. And just trying to, again, make the flow easier for them. The smoother we can help them with their operations, it's not just about the screen media, right? We have a bigger picture in mind as being a partner, and we'll try to help them in whatever way we can.
All right, well, that is our third interview for today. That is Ian Edwards of Major. Ian, appreciate you getting together with us, and looking forward to doing more content with you in the future. I know we've had good partnership in the recent past over the years with Major. You've probably seen content provided by Major representatives in the pages of Pit and Quarry, but for the purposes of today's show, Jack, we covered a lot of ground. Again, from mine permitting to water management to screening. We're going to have episode 17 here in another couple of weeks. probably going to have a few more interviews from Ag One. We're also working on some things. I know I'm shortly going to be visiting with a couple folks from Peckham Industries, and they're celebrating their 100th anniversary this year. So looking forward to hopefully talking with Gregory Peckham and Damian Murphy, and maybe have some content for the podcast in the weeks to come. I'm also going to be going down to the Texas Aggregates and Concrete Association meeting. I know that's one that we've heard a lot of good things about, Jack, over the years. And, I'm going to be getting down there with our associate publisher, Dino Vitanza. So, Jack, any final thoughts you want to share, thinking back on our interviews or looking ahead to what's to come with Pit and Quarry?
No, I mean, you kind of hit on it, kind of a wide range of topics we covered, and I think this is an area where we can kind of pat ourselves on the back as, as a publication and as a brand, where that we can, where we're able to kind of cover that whole gamut, start to finish, even sort of that before start, if you want to look at, what Geologic is doing with sort of the mine planning and permitting and stuff like that, and then touching on water with Ken, and ultimately closing up with screening with Ian. I think it also just shows the knowledge and sort of the goodness of this industry. Four really good guys with Ben and Randy, and then Ken and Ian. So yeah, just another great batch of interviews. I was really glad we were able to sit down with these guys. Looking forward to hearing what you come back from TACO with. Looking forward to hearing what the Peckham guys have to say. I'm planning on hopefully getting out and doing some site visits myself here this late spring going into summer. So sky's the limit. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, that's our 16th episode down. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See you.